So one of the worst kept secrets in gaming, the PlayStation 5 Pro, has officially been announced, and during their presentation they showed that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will be getting a PS5 Pro upgrade. So what does that mean for Rebirth, and what does that mean for Remake Part 3? We'll talk about that in today's video. So the presentation for the PS5 Pro just took place, and there's a lot to go over. We'll get to Rebirth very shortly because it is going to be affected by this Pro. But Mark Cerny, who is the lead architect for the PlayStation consoles, was just kind of talking up the PS5 Pro and some of its benefits and advantages. There's the upgraded GPU, which is going to enable, I believe, 45% faster rendering for gameplay, which should hopefully provide for a smoother experience. There's advanced ray tracing, which I don't really care about. Anytime ray tracing is an option in a game, I'll turn it on, check it out, but then I usually turn it off just for performance stuff. But apparently that's going to be rendered faster as well. And then there's AI-driven upscaling, which they are calling PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, or PISR for short, if you want to go down the childish route, which is basically using AI upscaling to help clean up and sharpen the image. And they did show off side-by-side comparisons, but for my eyes, maybe I just have really bad eyes, I couldn't really see that big of an upgrade from game to game. Like Spider-Man 2 already looks really good. The Last of Us Part 2 already looks really good. The only game that really kind of stood out to me and I could see a visual difference with was Horizon Forbidden West. And that's because I played a ton of Horizon Forbidden West. And that game already looks really good. Like the wizards over at Guerrilla somehow managed to get a version of that game running which is close to 4K. I believe it's 1440p at 60 frames per second, and it looks beautiful. But even here I could see upgrades in terms of like the lighting, the overall clarity, and the sharpness of that image. So to me, that one actually did look more upgraded. The price of this thing, oh boy, this is going to be a problem. The PlayStation 5 Pro, which does not have a disc drive included, which was rumored, is going to be $699 US. So 700 bucks for a PlayStation 5 Pro. If you want the hard drive, that I believe is an extra $80 sold separately. So you're looking at $800+ for this new PlayStation 5 Pro experience if you want to get all the benefits and upgrades. But again, they didn't really sell me enough on whether or not this is going to be a big upgrade. But some of this also feels, you know, maybe we've kind of, you know, hit a wall when it comes to graphics. I don't really know how much better visually games can get because they already look really good. And I don't know if like the visual aspect is something we should be focusing on so much. I think it's maybe more of like a, we really got to improve these frame rates and resolutions kind of thing. But we will be getting more information. The Rebirth account on Twitter did say that there would be more info coming soon, so I'm expecting a bigger info dump, you know, maybe within the next week or two. Now, they did have a sizzle reel towards the end. This is where Final Fantasy VII comes into play, of all of the games that are going to be getting PlayStation 5 Pro upgrades for free. So the fact that they're free, that is nice, but again, this is a massively expensive console. And the shots they chose for Rebirth were kind of questionable. They straight up showed just like 2 spoilery shots of Rebirth. They had Zack in them, and then the last one was Sephiroth. So the first one is Zack in the church. They focus first on the flowers and kind of pausing on the video. The flowers do look a little bit better than what I remember them looking in standard Rebirth. And honestly, I think the only real improvement between these 2 shots is the lighting. The lighting does look better in the Pro version, and the lighting in Rebirth is kind of wonky. Some areas look really good, some areas look a little bit too flat and washed out, but usually everything looks best at night in the Remake trilogy is what I found. So hopefully this is a sign that the lighting will be improved with a Pro version as well. Zack also looked slightly more detailed in the close-up shot we got of him, and then there was the shot of Meteor heading towards the church that Zack is in, about to be destroyed. Again, it's really hard to kind of pick up whether or not these games look enhanced because of the shots they picked. But overall, I think they maybe should have chosen some better shots for Rebirth to really show off how different it could look. Maybe some better combat stuff or some bigger action set pieces, which we'll probably get at a later date. And then the one they showed of Sephiroth didn't really look all that different. It was him standing in the flames at Nibelheim. So what exactly is this going to mean for Rebirth? Well, it does show that Square Enix and Sony are still working together on the Remake trilogy to enhance it. For Rebirth, this most likely will provide, again, probably better resolution. Rebirth currently on a PS5 is using dynamic resolution, I believe, so In some areas, you get to an open area and it looks beautiful, and then you move a couple spots over and suddenly things are blurry. That's part of the changing dynamic resolution to keep the game running properly. There's also some issues with texture pop-in and load-ins, which I don't know if that'll be necessarily fixed with a Pro. That seems to be kind of an Unreal Engine kind of thing that happens from time to time in a lot of big games, but that could potentially be alleviated with a lot of this faster loading and processing that the Pro is providing. And we also might get a mode which will allow players to potentially play in 4K 60. Now, when I played Rebirth for the first time, I played in 4K 30 and I thought it was a wonderful experience. I'm not someone who's super crazy about frame rates. I don't mind playing in higher frame rates. Sometimes it's really nice to play at 60 frames with a slightly lower resolution. But for a game like Rebirth, it for the most part looks gorgeous all around. So playing at 4K 30, I didn't mind it. Sometimes I kind of prefer it. If I'm being honest, it does kind of add a little bit more of a cinematic kind of quality to the game. So for me personally, I'm not feeling the need to be like, oh, I need to spend $700+ on this experience to get a better version of Rebirth, especially with that PC version most likely going to get announced by the end of the year. That will be the superior way to play Rebirth. So if you're someone who has a beefy PC, you're better off just waiting for the PC version to get announced, and then you can play that version, which will be superior to the Pro. Now, what does this mean for Remake Part 3? Well, this is showing me that Remake Part 3 is most likely being developed and optimized for the PS5 Pro. Now, that doesn't mean it's made exclusively for the PS5 Pro. It'll still work on a PlayStation 5. That would be terrible if it didn't. But they're designing it most likely with the Pro in mind, which makes sense. Remake Part 3 is going to be a massive game. It's going to be much bigger than Rebirth, and you have to take into account everything they established in Rebirth is coming back for Remake Part 3 and then some. They still have to build out the rest of the planet with all of these different regions that we have yet to explore. And then you have to take into account things like airship travel. Rebirth was already really impressive with the minimal amount of loading that game had. You could literally run from one end of a region to another and there was no loading. It was seamless. And what's really funny is that the longest load times in Rebirth actually take place in Chadley's VR simulator. Going from round to round, sometimes you're sitting there for like 8 to 10 seconds of black screen waiting for the next thing to load in, which is kind of strange. But for the most part, that game runs really, really well. There's not too many issues with it when it comes to like the technical sides of Rebirth. And I think I only had like one spot in that game where the frame rate actually dipped a bit, and that's because there was so much happening on screen, and it was in Gilgamesh Island, which has a lot going on. It's a beautiful, well-lit environment. You've got 2 summons on the screen, 3 characters, and then you can use your own summon. So now you've got 3 massive summons running around with all these crazy lighting and particle effects, plus your party. There was a lot of strain on that section of the game, but for a brief moment in time, like the frame rate dipped a little bit and then it went back to normal. So there was a lot happening, but the PS5 was still able to handle it, no problem, which again is super impressive. And again, with Remake Part 3, that airship, getting back to the airship real quick, we're going to be flying all over the place, and you can't have load screens or ways to mask it like they did in Rebirth. In Rebirth, when you went into the water with the tiny Bronco, there were sections where the sky got really dark and it was almost like there was a storm. And I believe they used that to mask any type of big visual loading, so you didn't hit a load screen or the game wouldn't freeze. They wanted to keep it as seamless as possible for the gameplay experience. And with the high wind, you need the same thing. You're not going to be able to, hide behind weather changes or fog showing up, although they might use fog if they need to. And also that dark sky visual thing might have been like a visual trickery thing to make everything seem further than it actually is, so that way not everything seems so cramped and close together. But you have to have access to that entire planet from beginning to end with no loading. You have to take into account the weapons that are going to be spawning on the map as well. There's going to be Ultimate Weapon, which is probably going to be flying around like it was in the original game. Ruby Weapon is going to be popping up from the surface in the Corel region from time to time, which is going to be visually insane. There's the Emerald Weapon hiding in the ocean. We didn't even talk about the ocean. There's an entire land underneath the surface that they're going to have to create too, probably with the ocean, if they're going to allow us to go in there with the submarine and go to that underwater reactor that Shinra has, if we're going to be able to fight Emerald Weapon. And that's not even taking into account the weapons themselves. How much bigger are they going to look? I've been talking ad nauseum for years now that the weapons are going to be huge, and they probably will be, but we still have no idea of the scale of these things. And I assume that optimizing for the PlayStation 5 Pro allows them to do the most they possibly can to make the weapons look as super cool and big and visually stunning as they can. And again, most importantly is performance, allowing the player to either, run on foot, ride a chocobo, a gold chocobo, and use the high wind to get around with no visual hiccups and loading. So I'm assuming they're definitely developing Remake Part 3 with the PS5 Pro as their base model, and then from there they'll go to the optimizing it for a standard PS5. But I don't think that means that the PS5 version is going to be neutered and you're going to have to play it on a Pro to get the best experience. Obviously, it'll be a better experience on the Pro, but at the end of the day, the PC version of all of these games are what's going to be the most superior in terms of visuals and performance, assuming Square Enix can, put out a decent PC port. I know a lot of people were having issues with Final Fantasy XVI's demo on PC and struggling to get that to run at a higher frame rate and look visually consistent. So overall, just talking about like the technical aspects of what Rebirth could be with a Pro, what Remake Part 3 is probably going to be with that Pro in mind, it is super exciting. And again, based on that Famitsu article we got, we're going to get news for Remake Part 3 around this time next year. So I'm definitely expecting some sort of PlayStation blog interview where the devs talk about using the PS5 Pro and how it's going to enhance Remake Part 3. And then, after everything is said and done and the game has come out, I'm pretty sure they'll have some sort of like PS5 Pro collection version of 7 Remake, where 7 Remake is now PS5 Pro enhanced, Rebirth, and then Remake Part 3. And then hopefully sometime after that, they can get it out on PC and Xbox consoles for everyone else to experience. So with that being said, I know there's a lot of rambling and jargon going on in this video, but seeing like the technical aspects of the PS5 Pro is genuinely intriguing, even though the console itself is massively, insanely priced at $700. I get that you're getting 45% more power in your console, but $700 is insane. And the only way I'm going to be able to get that is if I somehow win the lottery or do insurance fraud at this point. That is the video. Let me know in the comments down below. What do you guys think of the PlayStation 5 Pro? It's expensive, man. Do you plan on picking one up? And do you think it'll make a big enough difference in performance for Rebirth or for something like Remake Part 3? I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.